Okay, it's Margie Wakefield?
Margie, M-A-R-G-I-E.
Okay.
Wakefield, W-A-K-E-F-I-E-L-D.
Okay, and you are a Democratic candidate for the 2nd District of the United States House? Is
That's
that
right.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
I should say my opponent's Lynn Jenkins, so
Okay.
it's the 2nd Congressional District.
Okay. Is this your first time running?
It
for
is.
office?
It is. I am not a career politician.
Okay.
Which I think is what we need this time, right?
Right. And you're a family attorney out of Lawrence?
Yes.
For your occupation?
Yes. I've been practicing for 29 years, and so I think that being a family law lawyer really suits me to be ready to go into Congress. You know, if you've got to try and bring people together. You know, I'm real used to trying to get people to say, look, you know, this is in your best interest for your family, you know, and we've got to find that common goal. So.
Okay. Is dealing with Republicans and Democrats like dealing with divorced men and women sometimes?
Sometimes, right? You talk about being polarized. You know? So, you got it. Hit the nail on the head there, John.
All right. I saw that you started with Bob Dole's campaign.
Not with his campaign.
Not with his
when
campaign?
I was many moons ago, right out of college, right? I worked on Bob Dole's Senate staff in Topeka. Just filled in during an election year. You know, somebody went off their campaign or their Senate staff to go onto their campaign staff, and so I filled in, did constituent services.
Okay.
Because I kind of learned how important it is, to, you know, to actually serve the people that you're representing.
So you were working with people on the ground floor in that position?
I was working with, you know, say people would have a problem with, you know, whether it was a question about Social Security or they were trying to get or anything, you know, they would go to their elected official about it. They would come in the office and have a question, we'd take the information and try and figure out, okay, what can we do to help you with this? And then, you know, make calls for them, get back to them, and whatever the circumstance warranted.
Okay. So at that time you were a Republican. What made you kind of switch teams, I guess?
Switch teams?
Yeah.
Well, you know, I mean, what I can say now is what a lot of people have been telling me across the district is not the party I grew up with, you know, and I know that's a big movement for people today. So I just found that you know, as I moved along, and that the Democratic Party suited me better at the time and the values that I believed in.
What do you think has changed?
What do I think has changed?
As far as what, not the party that they grew up with, what do you
Sure.
think has changed in the party?
Extremism.
Okay.
Extremism and obstructionism. You know, what we're seeing now in Washington and in Congress is, you know, the motivating factor about why I decided to run for Congress is, my gosh, we have got to get something working. You know, the just say no, shut down, gridlock isn't working for us.
Right.
And that's coming out of party politics and extremism. And I don't think regular Americans, and definitely not Kansans here in the 2nd District, want that.
Okay.
You know? And they want to get a job done. You send people to work and you expect that the job get done, and instead what we got was a shutdown Congress. And
Right.
that's why I'm running.
Okay. So as far as you mentioned the 2nd District, you have a wide range of ideologies from maybe a more liberal Lawrence to down here in southeast Kansas where you're going to find some more conservative ideas. How do you reach your base in this area?
Well, you know, I think, I'm going back to, I think that most of us want the same things. You know, they want our, you know, our families to be secure. We want our children to do well. We want to have jobs for our children to have, and so that they'll stay here and not leave the state. You know, the great brain drain. So, you know, I just talk about those things with people because that's what they're interested in. And so, it's, you know, how do we get to those things is the question. So I am spending a lot of time listening to constituents, you know, learning what matters here. You know, what do you need in this area? So that's what we're doing.
Okay. As far as southeast Kansas, I think Chanute, one of the biggest issues we have here is economic development. There's a higher unemployment rate than the rest of the state. Sales taxes may be a little bit higher than some of the other areas you're in. How can you, at the national level, help this area in, say, that economic development?
There are, you know, varying factors that I think are important that we need to look at. I think one thing that is so important for us is throughout the district and Southeast Kansas, obviously, we have a lot of educational institutions. We have great community colleges and technical institutions. We need to make sure that our educational institutions partner with business and with government leaders at all levels to really build that economic infrastructure that we need. So I think that's very important, to use the platform of the office of Congress to bring people together so that they'll know what's available, what resources we can bring in, whether that's small business administration, investments into our communities, for small businesses, because I think we've got to build the economy here locally. We have got to, grow it at home, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And so for that, we need to support our entrepreneurs and local businesses.
Okay. One of the in this whole part of the state, one of the big economic developers is oil and gas industry, and of course the wind industry. Energy in particular, what are your stances on, say, the energy industry? What do you think needs to move forward as far as in that area?
Well, I think that we have such an opportunity here, especially in Southeast Kansas, to grow the wind energy expansion, right? Mm-hmm. We need to, harness the production abilities that what we have here. Mm-hmm. We're second in the nation with the ability to produce wind energy. We ought to be manufacturing the components that make up the turbines and the rest of the ability to put that grid here, and we're going to have to extend the grid because we need to be able to export. And so, I always say, hey, export wind energy and import cash to Kansas. So we need to be doing that, and that's hugely important. And it's very important to for your federally elected officials to vote for the tax credit for wind energy. Very important to develop that.
Okay. As far as you mentioned education before, I was at a thing a couple weeks ago with a bunch of teachers. We're asking some state people about this. Common Core standards are set by the federal government. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct.
That's not correct?
It's a common fallacy.
Okay.
The Common Core was developed by a coalition of educators, National Association of Educators, mm-hmm. and business, mm-hmm. and state governors, I believe, from the states. It came from the states. And then they said, the idea was, look, we know that we live in a society where people are moving all over the United States all the time, and we need to make sure that they're trained and they have a immediate education. And so the idea was to make sure that there are standards that would be adhered to nationally, but it was not in any way, shape, or form from the federal government. It's common fallacy about that.
Do you think there should be a blanket type system over the national education system, or do you think it should be more left up to the states or local or even district by district?
We need to work in tandem with each other.
Okay.
We need to make sure that we have federal investment in our education system. Mm-hmm. We need that, and we need to make sure that we continue to make sure that we have federal laws that make sure that we have equity for all of our students in public education. But when it comes down to, what do we do? What are we teaching, in Chanute? We need to have significant local involvement. So with Common Core, you have these standards, but it's not the end all and the be all. You leave room. You leave a significant percentage of what you're going to teach up to the local standards. So if they believe, okay, well, we've met, I'm just making this number up, but if we've met Mark 50, in teaching of math in the 4th grade, and they believe, hey, we need to go up to Mark 75, then they should be able to do that. So I believe it needs to be a good mix.
Okay. I had saw on your website you have talked about the Paycheck Fairness Act. Mm-hmm. Would you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I believe that in this day and age, in the year 2014, that it's real important that all people, women in particular, are paid equal pay for equal work. They have the same qualifications. And this isn't just a female or women's issue, if you want to call it that. Mm-hmm. It's an economic issue. It's a family economic issue. because as we make sure that, our mothers, our daughters, our sisters are earning the same as someone else in the position, that helps the whole family. It helps the whole economy.
Right.
So, for my opponent to have said that this is a condescending issue to bring up to women, I find ridiculous and absurd.
Okay. Also, speaking on paychecks, you also mentioned the minimum wage, possible minimum wage raise. Do you have a stance on that, or?
I think that if people are working, a 40-hour week, and they're hardworking Americans, they ought to be able to, support their families without going in poverty and without needing government assistance. So, yes, I believe that we need to examine raising the minimum wage. I don't have a hard and firm number it needs to be, because I think that may be something that we need to look at regionally, but we need to address this problem.
Okay. Some say part of that problem is we have become more of a kind of a service nation where our skills are lagging behind the jobs that they need to move into. How can we take those people that are down here and get them over the gap to get to the skills where the positions are open?
That's one thing that's real important about our educational opportunities. Besides, a standard 4-year college or university, which so many want, and they should be able to have it, and it should be affordable. We also need to provide our children options, educational options, and so skills training and VOTEC and technical training. And so those are the kinds of educational opportunities that people will need for these jobs that are coming up in the areas that you were describing.
Okay. Do you have anything you want to talk about yourself?
Well, I just want to stress that I think that people all across the district, I don't care what party you are or anything else, understand that what's been happening is not working. That the shutdown was a symptom of all of that. And Lynn Jenkins has been in Congress since 2008. She's part of that problem. And so what we need are people who understand that what we need to have in Congress are people that will go there with an open mind and work with people, work across the aisle for the good of all of us to really find solutions instead of just voting no over and over again and not offering anything to people. As a congressperson, you ought to be able to use the platform of the office in your district to help people, to actually bring people together and make sure that your district is getting represented and that you are bringing people together for events in their district. And that's just not happening under our current Congresswoman.
Okay. So as far as going across the aisle, one of the polarizing things we have right now is Obamacare, or I don't remember the official name of it. What is your stance on that? And are you for it, or do you want to see something different moving forward?
Well, first of all, I think the very definition of insanity is to do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. Mm-hmm. So to vote over 50 times to repeal the Affordable Care Act is, I think, a huge waste of time and resources. Okay. So we know that there were certain things that we needed to address in our healthcare system in this country. Most reasonable majority of the people know, hey, we need to get rid of those pre-existing conditions that insurance companies were imposing on people. We needed to get rid of lifetime caps that insurance companies were imposing on people when they were at their sickest and needed care the most. We needed to make sure that we start providing preventative health care. It's not only good for you, but it's good for the economy. Yeah. So we knew that those things needed to happen, and people like that healthcare is extended to children to age 26. So the Affordable Care Act addressed those things, and that's done, and that's good. Now, are there things that need to be fixed? Yes. So how about we just do that? How about we quit trying to repeal it? How about we roll up our sleeves and address those things? That's what I say. But further, what I think is that a lot of this discussion misses the point, which is the real conversation, that I think we ought to be having, which is, what do we do about healthcare costs? we need to be addressing head-on the exorbitant cost of healthcare. You know, why do you, if you go in for an MRI at one hospital, it's a different cost than if you go to this other clinic? You know, why isn't that more standard? And why don't we know the cost of them before we go there? You know, these are things that I think people really want to be talking about and addressing.
Okay, you had said there are some things in the Affordable Care Act that you need to look at. What do you think some of those things are that need to be fixed?
Well, you know, I know that there is concern by some businesses about the cost to their businesses of the different things that they're having to comply with. So we need to find out how does the cost breakdown going to shake out, and how is it different for businesses of different, you know, numbers of employees. So I know that is something that's a concern that we need to look at. But you know, that is something that I think that we can go in now that we're starting to get numbers back and address. So it's not like, you know, starting over and recreating the wheel, so to speak.
Okay. There was a new farm bill that was signed. This is a big agricultural area. It set prices, I think, for how many, over a certain number of years for certain crops, certain livestock. What do you think about the new farm bill, and what do you think they may have done differently, if anything?
Well, first of all, you know, I know I've been going around the district and talking to our family farmers, and I know that they need, you know, a set and strong farm policy. They need, you know, because they need certainty. They need to know how to plan, you know, what they're going to do, and so they needed a farm bill. And it may not be perfect, but they have a farm bill, and now they know how to plan. And so the farmers I've been talking to, and you know, those Farm Bureau, believe that, you know, the farm bill needed to be passed, and they were for it. Lynn Jenkins voted against it, and you know, that's something that people are not happy about. I also know that one of the things that the farmers needed the most was the crop insurance program. And what Lynn Jenkins is now doing is voted for the Ryan budget, which is going to make significant cuts in that crop insurance program that will hurt our family farmers. So these are big issues for the farming community.
Okay. A big issue among my generation, and maybe some of the older generation, I know you may have some experience with this in Lawrence, is...
Are you calling me older?
is the marijuana issue. And I know Lawrence has had decriminalized marijuana for a number of years, as far as you don't go to jail, and then Colorado is also looking at Colorado is completely legal. And what is your position on moving marijuana away from being a Schedule I narcotic?
It kind of confused me because I don't know of Lawrence decriminalizing marijuana. Lawrence has no different rules on marijuana than the rest of the state. It's an infraction instead of a misdemeanor in Lawrence, or at least it was. I don't know of any different rules, but be that as it may, you know, what I think is that, look, sending people to overcrowded prisons and jails is ridiculous. That, you know, for marijuana possession, people should not be going to jail. I think, you know, our prisons and jails are overcrowded. It's too big of a cost. We need to address it in a different way, and that's where I am on it.